Hey there guys, Speccy here and welcome back to My Gaming Life episode 2. Now you may remember in the last episode that I covered off my very first gaming experiences in the arcades with Asteroids and Space Invaders, and also told you of my first taste of the home microcomputer with my brother's ZX81. So today I'm going to pick up right from where we left off and jump into the very next year, 1982. This was the year that gaming truly exploded for me and my brother in a big way. There were only two things that our little hearts desired at that time in our lives, and they were the Atari VCS, or 2600 as it's better known, and the ZX Spectrum. What we got, however, was something slightly different. Our parents brought us a Philips VideoPack G7000, otherwise known elsewhere on the planet as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Now this console had been around for a few years already by then, originally released in Europe in 1978 and hadn't exactly caused much of a stir in the gaming world. So I guess by the time we got one it was likely on offer and therefore a cheaper option for our parents at the time, and they probably didn't really understand or appreciate the difference between an Atari or a Philips/Magnavox console. But for us, it felt like a big old kick in the teeth. I mean, we'd built up so much hope and expectation around this. It was kind of like when all the other kids were wearing Puma and Adidas trainers and you got a pair of high-tech, or wanting a Mongoose BMX and getting a Rally Grifter. Oh, wait a minute, I have a much better example, and this one is quite visual too. You wanted these.
The foot are about to ambush the turtle's sewer places, but thanks to the turtle's periscope, it's no surprise. Take cover! The foot are attacking with their sewer ball. Watch out, turtles, or you'll wind up in the recovery room. Reach out and crush someone. From Playmates.
But your nan knitted you a set of these guys. I think you get the picture. I mean, at least I guess it was a games console. It just wasn't the Buzz Games console that everyone else was talking about or wanted. Though actually upon reflection, I do remember fondly playing on it for many hours. Though I likely never admitted as much to my friends at the time, I don't think I even admitted to owning it. It was always my brother's if any of my mates were to ask. So comparing these systems side by side, you can clearly see that the G7000 was more like an armoured car and far more robust looking console than the Atari 2600. Not only that, but it even had a touch membrane keyboard for, well, I'm not sure what for really, apart from the computer programmer cartridge, which, as you can probably imagine, was a big old steaming heap of fun, of course. The cartridges themselves were also far chunkier than anything seen before on the Atari 2600. They even had a convenient handle on the top for easy yankability. And if that wasn't a word before this point, it certainly is now. And look at the boxes that house these monster carts. High quality hinged plastic cases that, somewhat reminiscent of beta video cassette cases, looked bloody awesome at the time, but sadly would crack or shatter in an instant if dropped on a hard floor. So let's just take a look at some of the games for this console. Firstly, Munchkin. This is an unashamed Pac-Man clone, and with good reason. I would actually say that I prefer this version of the game to the Atari 2600's official Pac-Man release. It just plays way better and is much more fun in my opinion. And for my next pick, Pickaxe Pete. The Donkey Kong-esque platform and ladder game that sees you in the role of the aforementioned Pete, tasked with surviving a mine full of deadly hazards. Here though, instead of a hammer, we get a pickaxe, of course, and in place of the barrels, you get boulders to smash. This game is a hell of a lot of fun, even though it may look very dated nowadays. Next, it's a game that is easily my favourite two-player game on the system, Gunfight. Now this is a clone of Midway's arcade classic Boot Hill, as mentioned in the last episode, and actually does a great job of bringing that silver screen high noon shootout action to your living room TV. Also, I can remember things would often wind up getting seriously competitive between me and my brother on this one. And finally, I'd like to give a mention to a game that looks like being way ahead of its time and which I always wanted. Quest for the Rings is an epic experimental role-playing game. It came with its own foldable map and keyboard overlay, plus some counters that you could use on them, all of which was presented in a beautifully illustrated giant box. Yet to this day I've never actually even played this game, but come on guys, admit it, this looks bloody awesome. There were also a few third-party games made available for the G7000, most notably Frogger, Hubert and Popeye by Parker. but due to a lack of interest in the machine in general, it sadly ended its run in 1983, with no further games being released for the system after that date. Now, although I may never actually have owned one of the popular games consoles at the time, please do not be mistaken into thinking that I never played on any of them. My neighbour owned a CBS ColecoVision, and my two best friends had the Intellivision and the Atari 2600, so I had more than my fair share of gaming variety when I think back to it. I can remember playing all of the home console classics such as Centipede, Donkey Kong, Amadar, Lock and Chase, Zaxxon, River Raid, Tapper and Vanguard, either at one of my friends' houses or at Watts, a local furniture store in my hometown, which catered for the potential video game boom with its very own gaming department, housing all of the big consoles and games of the time, all playable on demonstration stands. Such sweet memories. But there was one elusive console that none of my friends had, and I always wanted back then. The Milton Bradley Vectrex. This was a console that I yearned for years. Would I ever get one? Well, you'll find out in a later episode. Now, much later, that very same year, Christmas 1982, we got the one thing that we'd been banging on about for what seemed like an eternity. The home computer to rule them all. The one, the only, ZX Spectrum. Or Speccy for the die-hard fanboys out there, of which I'm not ashamed to admit I most definitely am. This machine, much like the ZX80 and 81 mentioned in the last episode, was invented by a pioneering giant of the computer age, Clive Sinclair, who through his devotion to the UK technology industry achieved Sir status with a knighthood in 1983, which I have to say is wholeheartedly deserved. Queenie's not wrong.
Toasty!
So what was so special about this machine? Well, firstly, it was very familiar with those that had used the ZX81 before it for its programming language BASIC, making it desirable for those wishing to tinker in such things. But mainly it just seemed like everyone else was getting one, at least this side of the pond anyway. I realised that this computer did not make any waves stateside, but over here for the following few years and all across Europe, it was dominating the market, both in terms of price and capabilities. Now, on paper it may not look capable of too much. It came in either 16 or 48K variety, boasting a sexy rubber keyboard, and yes, rubber can be sexy. A multicoloured video output with a choice of 15 colours, although admittedly only 2 could ever occupy each 8x8 pixel grid of the screen, resulting in some rather funky collision clashing overlay in a lot of the games. On the audio side of things, it couldn't offer up much more than blips and beeps, but it was amazing what some of the programmers managed to get out of those beeps when they pushed the limits of the machine later in its life. But for all of its faults, it remained a solidly loved computer here in the UK for many years, with a rapidly growing game selection that could put even the PlayStation to shame. The UK game scene was set to ignite. This was an era of homegrown talent. Bedroom coders like Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy creator Matthew Smith, who with vivid imagination, determination and probably gallons of Lucozade, found a way of rising through the ranks to become the cream of the crop in the gaming industry. Many software houses were developed from next to nothing during this period. Teenage dreams were becoming a reality for developers such as the Darling brothers David and Richard, who after making a name for themselves at UK software house Mastertronic, began coining it in to such a degree that they were able to gain a 50% sharehold of the company, which they later sold in 1986 and went on to found Codemasters, probably one of the most influential game developers of all time. Many other developers were emerging during this period also, such as Gremlin Graphics, Bug-Byte, Ocean, Elite, Firebird, Software Projects and my all-time favourite dev team, Ultimate Play the Game, who later went on to become Rare, producing many games exclusively for Nintendo during the 90s. So as you can see, this was a golden era in gaming history, at least here in the UK. With prices starting at as little as $1.99 for some of the Mastertronic range, gaming became accessible to the masses, with many kids able to buy their own games with their own pocket money. And that was no mistake. Pitching the market in this way enabled both the developers and the system to flourish, establishing a firm hold on both the consumer market and wallets. So many great games were spawned during this era. The aforementioned Manic Miner will always have a place in my heart as the very first platform game that I ever played, a genre that has become one of my favourites over the years. Text adventures became highly acclaimed, with those wishing to appear more intellectual. The isometric game was popularised with titles such as Alienate, Batman and Head Over Heels. Icons were born like Monty Mole, Jet Set Willy and Saberman, and everybody seemed to be in on the action. Remember that this was a time before trading shops even existed, so swapping games in the playground between your friends was a common practice amongst school kids, as was using tape-to-tape hi-fi units to copy games, filling up C60 cassettes with as many as possible and writing the start times for each on the inlay cards for easy locating with a data cassette recorder, such as the classic WH Smith's CBD 8300 with its inbuilt time counter. Make no mistake, this was probably one of the most crucial periods in gaming history and helped to bolster a strong foundation on which to build its future. Although this seems to mostly go unnoticed by much of the US and Canadian population, who seem to almost credit Nintendo single-handedly for resurrecting the entire game industry post the game crash of 1983, which simply isn't true. Like it or loathe it, the Speccy with its rubber keys and striking rainbow stripes remains an iconic symbol of the UK home computer industry and played a much bigger part than most realise in keeping gaming alive. So this is where I end today's episode, in a nostalgia-fueled daydream of colour-clashing pixels. My love for this machine, like so many other people, shall never die. God bless you, Speccy. May you live in our hearts forever. In the next episode, I will explore the biggest rival that the Spectrum would ever face, a true test from the West, the Commodore 64. Who will be triumphant in this battle of the bytes? Join me next time to find out. In the meantime, if you have enjoyed this video, then don't forget to slap that like button, click subscribe to support my channels, and ding that bell to be notified of all future Retrospexx content. I have been Speccy, you've been incredible, and I look forward to looking backwards with you again in the next episode. See you soon. Bye for now.